Welcome to the Social Engineer Podcast, the Security Awareness Series. This is episode 235. I'm Chris Hanagi, CEO and founder of Social Engineer LLC, the Innocent Lives Foundation, and the Institute for Social Engineering. I've been hosting this podcast since 2009. That makes me really old, doesn't it, Ryan? My trusty co-host for this series, as always, is Ryan McDougall. Ryan, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Social Engineer. I'm also the co-trainer of our Master's Level Social Engineering course, as well as our Red Team Labs offering. So I've been in the information technology industry for about 26 years, with the last 10 being focused on security awareness and adversary simulation. So over that time, I've taught many classes and spoke at many places at public and private events on all of those topics.
Who sounds old now? No, just kidding.
This guy.
Yeah. As always, this episode is sponsored by our company, Social Engineer. So if you are out there dealing with all the problems that everyone is dealing with, right? All of us are focused on phishing right now because what we see happening in the market. Phone-based attacks are on the rise, 550% increase, according to one report by Phish Labs, which is really scary number, and just in the last 12 months. And that is for voice phishing. If you're wondering what you can do about it, you should reach out to us and we can talk to you about our phishing services and some other things that can help you stay secure from that threat. Just go to social-engineer.com. You can check out the things that we do. If you are interested in the topic of social engineering, then I invite you to join our Slack channel. You can get the link in the show notes. If you don't see it there, then please just ping Ryan or I, and we'll gladly get it to you over LinkedIn or whatever other social media you use. There's about 1,500 people in there now every day talking about all aspects of social engineering. It's a really great channel, family friendly and legal. So if that sounds like you, then come on in. We emphasize that because we've had some interesting folks come in thinking they were talking about other types of social engineering. But we even have a job board in there. So if you're a company looking to hire some InfoSec professionals, or you're an InfoSec person looking to change your career, you can jump on the job board. We've had about 10 people find employment through there. So just hop on in, join us, and you'll have a great time in there chatting each and every day. Also, everyone who's listening, please go check out innocentlivesfoundation.org. If you're not familiar with that organization, it's a nonprofit that was started over 6 years ago. Really proud to say that we've just hit 500 cases just the last month or so. Our mission is to help law enforcement geolocate and track people who traffic children and who create child abuse material. And like I said, we have over 500 cases now, and it's a really exciting time for us. So you can check out our mission on the website, innocentlivesfoundation.org, or if you're a parent or caregiver and you need some information on how you can talk to your kids about these things, then you can find that there. And if you want to support us either by volunteering or donating, you can do all that on the website. So go check it out. If you're listening to this podcast on any of the audio platforms, that means not YouTube, then you are hearing the sweet sounds of the best rock and roll band on the planet, Clutch. They have graciously allowed us to use their music as the opening and exit music. Huge fans. Ryan and I have been fans almost our whole lives. Well, I mean, not really, because they weren't around when I was a kid, but you know what I mean. Their whole band lives, we've been fans. And there's been awesome support for us here and also for ILF. So really happy to have and support their music. And last but not least, if you like the topics that you hear, then please keep giving us those comments. Just today, we had someone come onto the YouTube channel and give us an idea for a new topic and some really great encouragement that you're liking, especially this series. The person was commenting about the CISO series. So really excited to hear those things. Thank you for that. Give us a thumbs up or a heart or a like or whatever the emoji is of the day for saying that you actually like what we're doing, and it will help spread the message everywhere. Okay, now let's get to the reason we're all here. Okay, and that's for our guest. So this is going to be a really interesting one. Our guest today is Stuart Archer. He's a dynamic healthcare leader with a proven track record of quality improvement, growth, and innovation. And I want to say just from a personal note, because, these are all words, but I saw this firsthand. I had the privilege of being out at a conference with the Oceans Healthcare folks, and it is not what you would expect. I mean, it is a really, really interesting group of people that really respect each other and also respect the work that they do. He started in healthcare as a nurse's aide, and now he's running the whole show, right? So there's something we're going to talk about. He building a laser-like focus on patient-first care model, which is really important in healthcare, as we all know. Building teams guided by empathy and compassion, something else we'll talk about a lot on this show. And then he took the helms at Oceans Healthcare in 2015. and he shepherded in a period of unprecedented growth. And really, that's so true. Oceans is now an industry leader amongst very few behavioral health providers to implement much needed quality benchmarking tools like patient depression and anxiety questionnaires, and implementing a company-wide electronic medical record system. They've earned numerous awards, including being named one of Inc. 5000's fastest growing companies in America for 6 consecutive years. That's impressive. And Stuart is also a large board member of the National Association of Behavioral Healthcare. He was named 2021 CEO Magazine Outstanding Healthcare Executive, and he earned the 2018 EY's Entrepreneur of the Year in Healthcare Award for the Southwest region. That's a lot. Stuart, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, you know what? Thank you guys for having me. Chris, great to see you again. Ryan, nice to see you as well. And look, when I was just listening to you guys kind of talk through the last couple of years, I would have to say that I'm very lucky to be here as a representative. I think more than anything of the great work of our organization and the people that I have a chance to represent and work every day. And look, we were, Chris, very excited to have you with us a couple of weeks ago. I think it really spurred a lot of great conversations. I think I can share some of those today. And anyway, very, very happy to be here.
I want to start off with something about your path here, because one of the things that I noticed, and that, it's part of something that we said when I was out there, it seemed like your company really focused on people first and empathy. Now, we're all here to do something, make money, right? That's what we're in business for, right? We're not, I mean, some of us, we volunteer at nonprofits, but we're here to make money. That we need it to live. So how did you come up with this approach of let's focus on our people and let's focus on an empathetic approach to people and still make it a business?
Sure. Well, probably like you guys and a lot of your listeners, I always respect people that knew what they wanted to do that when they were growing up and had that whole thing kind of, the world open up for them. That was not my journey. My journey was, we like to joke, we're still trying to figure out what we want to do when we grow up. And so I began life in a very different, professional life in a very different world. I was a college football coach for several years, and played college football. Had a chance to coach as a young graduate assistant, and had a chance to be around some really amazing people, some inspiring people, and some of the best coaches in the country. And what I found was they weren't trying to be other people. They were very true to who they were, and in so many ways, nobody I think would confuse most football coaches with somebody who are soft or someone who didn't communicate clearly. But what I found is that empathy and also having high expectations for people can kind of live in the same area. Unfortunately, I think what we've done is to if not explicitly, kind of inexplicitly say, well, if you're empathetic, you're weak, right? I would say the exact opposite. I think it takes a lot of strength to be empathetic. I think it takes a lot of strength to try to understand things from other people's perspectives. And, it's funny, we all, many of us have fallen in love with the Ted Lasso show. And it's funny how that has become kind of a business mantra. But, at the end of the day, I think people who fundamentally want to see other people win are people that I like to work with. And those are the type of people that we try to attract to our organization. And in that environment, we thrive.
You said some really important things there, which, hopefully the listeners will believe this. This was unplanned. Very unplanned, because this is something that we focus on a lot, not only in our company, but on this episode, that sometimes people view empathy and meekness as weakness. But we say just what you said, completely the opposite, because it's easy to abuse your power or to use anger or to use fear. It's harder. Like when we do our work, right? We're tricking people into doing things, and we say, come up with a pretext that doesn't make someone feel worthless. Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's hard. I got to trick you into giving me your password, but not threaten to fire you, not threaten to, ruin your life, not threaten to exploit you. I have to work extra hard to come up with a pretext that makes me friendly and still accomplish the job. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I love your approach to that. Now, how do you so that's you. How do you then transfer that through everyone in the company? How do you make sure that all your team does the same thing?
I think we're very mindful about who we let into our organization, and I think a lot of that is we believe in team interviews. So a lot of us talk to folks before they come into the company. I think we're really big on work history. Where have you been? Tell us a little bit about your journey. We love people that have interesting backgrounds, that have come from different areas. Interestingly enough, we're almost about 95% female led as an organization. So when you look at our hospitals, we're very different than the bulk of the industries in the sense that we've been very lucky. We've been very blessed to have the leaders that we have. They don't look like the rest of the industry in some ways. And so for us, we believe that's a real strength. And, but these are things that sound really good. They're certainly fun to talk about. They're hard to live, right? Because we're all human. We all have those days in which, we feel stressed, we feel pinched, we feel like we've got to get things done. And so I would say, it first starts with understanding how we all deal with stress and what is that place that we go to, because we all go somewhere when we're really stressed. We exhibit some type of behavior. And so I think part of building a better empathetic team is starting with ourselves and saying, well, how do I react to stress, right? Am I a blamer? Am I a screamer? Am I someone who just kind of shuts down right at the end of the day? And so I think through that, understanding who we are helps us to better work with others. And again, sounds really simple, really, really hard. And I think that in healthcare today, like a lot of industries, there's probably been never more a stressful time on a bunch of different fronts.
I mean, Ryan and I have this conversation all the time. Our company is based on communicating and understanding how humans make decisions. And you would think with what we do for a living, we should be perfect at it. Like there should never be a miscommunication or a problem in our company. Right. That is just not the truth. It's not the truth, right? I mean, from the top down, we have, like you said, those days where you just woke up on the wrong side of the universe or whatever, it's not that you're going to react poorly, right?
Well, and look, and I would say this for the folks who are listening, who make a lot of these kind of decisions, it also doesn't mean that everybody is the right fit everywhere, right? There are people who have worked for us or that we work with, who this is the perfect location for them. There's also other locations where people can thrive, and it may not be with us, and that's okay, right? I think that's another kind of hard thing to maybe wrap your head around is there are certain environments that bring the best out in all of us, and there are certain areas that don't. And so many times, we've been very lucky that this is an environment that is that way for many people. But when that's not the case, when we're maybe not the right environment, or this person has a different take on things, there is a way to do that where it preserves somebody's humanity, their pride, and you don't have to create enemies. It doesn't have to be overtly, a conflict. But again, you have to be brave. You have to have those conversations. Compassion takes, it takes some risk to be compassionate. And I think a lot of our organizations, I think, skip over that step for a lot of things they convince themselves of. And so, no, it's we're living that every day too, Chris, here.
Sounds like you're have a lot of introspection. Like everybody looks at themselves first, and then how to deal with the people around them. Is that something that you incorporate into some corporate level of training, or is that just part of the recruiting process that you end up coming up with?
I think for us, look, I would say I am probably my worst critic, right? Like a lot of folks, you kind of start with yourself first. And we do, we try to bring folks in who have humility, people who can hopefully see things from other people's perspectives. Now, look, when there's a crisis, it's definitely not time for a committee meeting, right? It's not time to hold hands and check on everybody's feelings. But, I think a lot of times companies convince themselves they're always in a crisis, so they can kind of step over those things and maybe move quicker or do things more harshly than they need to be. But it is. I mean, I think that, we jokingly say that have you guys heard, it's a very advanced business tool. I would probably ask you guys to think about, or if you haven't used it, have you heard of the airport rule?
I have not. No,
it's super complicated, but I'll try to. I'll see if I can convey it. when you're interviewing somebody, ask yourself, would I want to be stuck in the airport with this person for 2 hours? Or on a layover, right? Because, that question, right? A lot of times people can ace interviews. They're technically really sound. I would imagine this happens a fair amount in y'all's industry, right? This person has all the certifications. They've done all the training. They've got that one kind of thing you're looking for, but they're just painful. Right. And if they're painful in an interview, they're just going to be tougher later on. So for us, look, we love anyone who's got the right technical acumen. In healthcare, there are certainly no shortage of certifications and trainings, and many of those are required regulatory wise. But, if you can find someone who's also got the cultural fit, that's what we're really shooting for.
Huh. I really like that airport rule. Let's transform this into a little bit about security now, right? That's the main topic of what usually we talk about. So normally you don't see that start with the CEO, right? But in your case, you are very proactive when it comes to your cybersecurity program. Talk to us about building that from scratch, and why did you decide to be the spearhead of that and really, really champion that effort?
Sure. I would say for me, I'm a curious guy. Doesn't mean I'm smart at any of it. I would just say I'm curious. And so I've always been a little bit of a techie guy too. So, I had, way back in the day, one of those first kind of modems that you put the phone on. I think it was like a 200 baud or 500 baud.
Oh, man.
And, I was burning up my Commodore 64 back in the day. And so I've always been a guy that's just been interested in technology. And, I think as I look at our industry, healthcare in general, we intersect with so many people at different points in their lives. And we think a lot about risk in healthcare. We think a lot about, infections, obviously, as we've seen recently with COVID. We think a lot about harm prevention, as we talk to you about your diabetes or your heart disease. We work on kind of multiple levels to either treat, prevent, or help work with folks in their toughest of hours. But I think one of the things that I feel like as our industry's moved more towards an interconnected world, and a lot of things that we're doing in healthcare today are working to ensure that you have access to care along your whole healthcare journey. And more providers are working with other providers. We have to hand off things. We have to give them information. It's become increasingly a worry of mine that while we're prepared for some of the risk, in many ways in healthcare, we're preparing for the risk of yesterday or risk that while they're still there are other things that are really coming after us. And I think, to me, it's increasingly one of my fears that there's a host of a lot of bad guys out there coming after healthcare for a lot of reasons we can talk about. And I don't know if this has always been one of the risks that we've had at the top of our list. Look, I was professionally raised in Louisiana. We prepared for hurricanes every year, right? This was pre-Katrina, certainly post-Katrina. We saw the best and the worst of what those things can bring. And so today, you won't find a hospital in Louisiana that's not prepared for a hurricane. They do it better than anybody in the country. But I would argue that whatever analogy you want to use, hospitals around the nation are at risk for their own hurricanes as it relates to this and the forces that are trying to come after them. And so, we've tried to think a lot about that here and be thoughtful about our preparations.
So what type of responses did you get from, like you said that where Chris said it actually, but where you built the security program from scratch? What are the responses that you kind of got from the people within your organization when you were trying to kind of realize that vision?
I would say it's interesting, right? I think people are, I think they're almost, how do you say it? I mean, who hasn't had some phishing email, right, in their personal life? Who hasn't had something at some level sketchy happen to them or somebody come after? I think that people, I don't know if it's overwhelmed, indifferent. I think here internally, it's been tough at times to help people to understand that this doesn't just happen to other people, right? This can happen to us, and this can happen here in our organization. And I think that we're blessed with a great IT department here. We have some great leaders here who think a lot about this. But I think that there's some lessons maybe learned from us. There's some lessons that I've seen. I think we're still on a journey. I wouldn't hold us out as the best in the world, but I do think I see it a little bit from both perspectives. And I would say the average employee here says, well, that can't happen to me. That's not going to happen at Oceans.
That's interesting. A lot of times when we're talking with folks, we get this question a lot. Like people, let's say, who are the IT guys, and they're having a problem with the top-down mentality, right? So they have the idea, they have the passion, they want to institute this, and this, but then getting the CEO involved is difficult. Now, that is not the problem at Oceans. So what advice would you give to other C-level folks listening to this podcast, why it is so important to listen to those folks in your company and your organization that are coming to you with these security programs and ideas that they want to implement?
Well, it's a great question, and one I've thought a lot about. I think at any level, we're all selling something every day, right? Whether it's your kid who wants to stay up later, or those of us who maybe want a new car or something. I think a lot of times what I've seen is IT folks sell, if you will, or educate based on things that are important to them. They sell on fear, or they sell on technical differences. I think many of those are, while they're very important and they're accurate, I don't think they speak to the issues many times that the people that they're trying to convey the purse strings to. And so I think it's important to understand that when you're selling, it's not, well, I've seen this before too with technical folks. They want to overwhelm you with all these things that frankly you don't even understand. And about halfway through, you're not even listening. Right. I think here we've had some great folks here at Oceans that have been really able to lay out, okay, here's the approach we're taking. Here's why we're taking this approach. Here's the economic impact of it. But also here's how the organization is going to win, right? Here are those things that we're going to get. Here's those things that we can sleep better at night. I would say also the other thing is understanding your risk. I've worked with some great IT folks in my career, and I think they were always aware that, there is a level of diminishing return sometimes, and so how do you match up the level of investment with the company at the right time? So I think you can also kind of overdo it with, and look, I'm the CEO talking, so you can. I think you can overdo it with the gadget talk. I think you've got to stay focused on the fundamentals and really convey what those are going to provide for the organization.
I think it's a valid point. Like what you said, it's basically like an IT guy needs to learn how to speak CEO, because it's not about all the tech. It's about what is this going to do for me and how is this going to protect the organization.
Yes. I think that's right. I think that's right. And I think, look, a lot of folks in the tech field too get very centered on one company and one technology that they endorse. I always find it's a lot more valid when folks come to me with 2 or 3 companies in the same space, compare and contrast, give me the whys and what are the positives and negatives of each one of these, versus I've always worked with X company. They're great. I know Bill. He's been in my last 3 companies. And it's like, well, and that may be great. It may be the right fit here, but like in anything, we want to look at, different vendors with different perspectives. So maybe weedy, maybe too practical, but anyway, I would just say those are the things that hopefully for your listeners and, they can, hopefully it may help them, I think, as they walk down that pathway, and for the other CEOs on their listening, they can agree or, let us know if they agree or not.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the advice is it works for you, right? So it doesn't mean it's the same for everybody. Yeah. This is why we ask the question. We get this question a lot. Ryan and I get this a lot from folks that we talk to about, like, how do we get buy-in from the top down? And, your answer fits really closely to things that we normally say. It's all how you present. And what you're focusing on during that presentation. And it can't be like what you said. I really like this guy. He's my buddy. I've worked with him before. Right. That the CEO doesn't care about that, right? I don't care if we're best friends. It doesn't matter. Can you secure my company? Can you do this job? Right. That's what I care about. Right?
That's right.
I just recently, in the last year or so, Ryan instituted a Phishin program in our company for our employees.
Wow.
And at first I was like, well, we were so small. Why do it? And he's like, because we got to eat our own dog food, as one of our other employees says, like we're selling this to people, we're doing it to them. And if they ever go, well, how often do you fish your employees? The answer a couple of years ago would have been, well, we don't. And they'd have been like, what? Well, you don't do your own, like, it's like a personal trainer doesn't go to the gym. So he instituted this thing. And I got to tell you, just the statement when he said, well, we got to be doing what we're selling to our customers. And I'm like, perfectly right. And now I can see the improvement every month when they send the fish out. They send a report afterward that tells that he rewards the quickest clickers. We don't ever
the
call
quickest
people
reporters.
out. Well, quickest reporters. Sorry, yes, not clickers. Sorry, that was terrible.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, Stuart was looking at me like, "What?" Yeah,
no,
reporters.
The quickest reporters, and now those people feel really good. They're like, "Oh yeah, I'm on the board this month." And I've seen a difference in even just in me and how many fish I now report.
Well, you guys know this from your work. I've seen it in your writings. Positive affirmation works, right?
Yeah.
It's
much better than punitive.
Yeah, it's timeless, right? I mean, I think we get this so wrong, where we want to highlight and beat people up and embarrass them. You know what? Positive affirmation; those are the things that we try to embrace in our organization. And I had heard you talk about this before. It's great that you guys do that and test yourselves, and couldn't agree more with the positive affirmation.
Yeah. I now love talking about it because it's a great story, because I'm like, wow, yeah. So for the first, 10 years, we never did this. I never thought of it. And now Ryan comes and he's like, hey, we're going to start doing this. And I'm like, nah, we're too small. It's, whatever. And he's like, we got to start eating our own dog food, man. And I'm like, oh, he's so right. And that was the sales pitch, right? He talked to me like a CEO and was like, how are you going to stand in front of a group of people speaking about a fishing program? And then they ask you about yours and you're going to go, right?
So true. Well, and look, that kind of goes back to how we work together, right? When we ask you to, approach our company and test some of our barriers as well.
Yeah. And I thought that was a really interesting approach, right? So we could talk about this a little, because you really wanted to highlight cybersecurity, right? And you came to us and you had a really interesting idea on how you wanted to do that. Do you want to talk a little bit about what it is that we did together?
Sure. So a couple times a year, or we try to bring all of our CEOs together. Oceans Healthcare is a behavioral health provider. At the end of the day, we own and operate hospitals across the United States, and we have wonderful, very dedicated folks who run these hospitals, and obviously our patients are in a very vulnerable state. They're very private hospitals, and so because of that, we have a lot of clinicians, a lot of business folks who run the hospital, and I think while we certainly have provided them training, I think in around security issues, for a lot of the reasons we mentioned today, I've become more concerned that our leadership staff was growing a bit indifferent, I think, to these storms that I felt maybe swirling around our company and other healthcare providers. And so I said, we're going to bring somebody in to come and help educate our folks. And so when we have our conferences, I always like to bring people in from different industries, different walks of life, different perspectives. And so Chris and I got connected through a mutual friend, and we were very excited to have him come in and speak. Now, as a way to kind of make that more real, we actually engaged Chris and his team to hack us, to come after us and to phish our organization and to go after the people that were in the room. And so little did they know that they were going to be part of the exercise for the day, and that they were going to be some of the examples that we used. Now we shared with them before the session. We didn't want to embarrass anyone, and it turned out great. But it made it very real, very quick.
It turned out really good, and I got to say, your people were so wonderful about it. Right? They were so invested in it, and they caught us. So, so what you're doing is good, right? I mean, I'm glad you let me say that part, I have to eat my own foot there, but I mean, that shows that what you're doing with them, the education that you're doing with them is sticking, because one of your people that you gave as a target didn't just shut us down, but reported it and took it up a level to keep reporting it because he was worried that you guys were under attack. Yeah. So that to me shows like, okay, not only did he say, yeah, this is a little weird, but then he took that better action to say, let me now save the company from what I don't know what's happening. And that is, that to me, it goes back to this whole conversation about creating the culture, right? Creating a culture where that person felt comfortable going to the senior IT person and saying something's happening. He knew he wasn't going to get berated. He knew he wasn't going to get told he was stupid. He knew he was going to be listened to and that it was going to be taken care of. And that's exactly what happened.
We call that the ideal behavior of all of our tests, is when someone doesn't fall for it, but actually reports it through the process that's been established. So that's how you.
Well, look, I got to tell you, I got to tell you, I was holding my breath because you just hope, right, that when you send them out there that they do well. But look, this is not a risk that is on the radar. I mean, increasingly, historically, of most healthcare people. I think it is now today. But when we think of these healthcare risks, we tend to think of the large hospital in all of our communities, the big hospitals, right? And some of these hospitals have had very public, breaches and problems, and they're the big targets for a lot of the really bad folks. But the truth is, there's equally as large healthcare world in other areas. So if you think about nursing homes and you think about home health and you think about clinics, these other areas that provide really vital healthcare, not just behavioral health, many of them have federally not received monies for security or other standards. And so I go back to the beginning, and as we're in a more interconnected world, any kind of failure in that chain allows bad folks in to really do a lot of damage. And so I think for organizations like ours, as we've grown in size, we're increasingly becoming a bigger risk. And we've seen the volume of attacks increase. And I think that, certainly trainings like we did, it's always been my belief that we, that from a technology perspective, there's only so much we can do. And I think, Chris Ryan, we believe what you are, that really the best technology, the best prevention are equipping and ensuring and educating your employees. Because there's only so much technology we can deploy. And so I think the more knowledge and the more education, the more training and the more awareness ultimately our employees have, the better.
So let me ask you a couple of questions that we usually ask, of the guest on this particular episode. If there was some companies listening to this episode right now that said, we need to start, right? Like maybe we have something, but we're not where Stuart is. We're not where Oceans is. What advice would you give to a company today that is listening to this episode on getting started with a security awareness culture?
I would say I think a lot of organizations get very overwhelmed at where to start. How do I begin this, right? What do I do? And can I afford this? I mean, that's the other thing, right? Is that there's a lot of great products out there. There's some that we can't even afford. And so I would say that, there's a host of specialists out there. There's a lot of great folks out there that can help you on that journey. I think and again, Chris, Ron, this is more y'all's world than mine. I think there's a product at a price point for everybody and for different size organizations. And I would say that it's amazing how much you can get done or not even the basics. There's a lot you can do and still be judicial from a cost perspective. I would say the biggest thing, though, is that we've seen companies, I've been in companies who they got the newest toys all the time, but the employees didn't have awareness. And that's free. That didn't cost anything. Equipping, ensuring, educating your employees on the risk that they can put the company at, and also ways in which they can help protect the company. And I think the CEO has to own it. And from my perspective, at least, is what I believe. Is it can't be just an annual education you get. It can't just be some attaboys or attagirls or, hey, this is the bad list that clicked on things. I think you've got to own it and talk about it. It's a risk like anything else in the organization, and it's certainly becoming a bigger and bigger one.
I really like the one that you talked about with education, because I think that is something that a lot of people don't focus on. They're like, well, we'll buy some videos. But I like the way you word that, like having someone in the company assigned to sending out reminder emails or building some nice little educational reminders for the employees. And some of the points you said before about making it personal, making it stick out, those things can really go a long way in helping a company. That's really good advice. So as far as books, since I started this podcast in 2009, my very first episode, I thought I was going to ask the guest for a book recommendation, and we would start a list on our website of books, and it grew into a thing where it doesn't have to be about IT, it doesn't have to be about leadership. Yeah. It could just be a book you read that you just happen to love. Do you have any that you would like to recommend?
You know what's funny is, so if you were to look at my bedside table or my phone, I'm a big reader. I love to read. But I have to admit, that by the time, reading is very cathartic for me. It's a great way for me to unwind. So I read across a wide spectrum of books. Many of those, maybe not the traditional business books, if you will. But I recently read a great book by John Meacham on Abraham Lincoln, and There Was Light. I thought that was a fabulous book. Again, it falls under the more nerdy category. A great book called Raven Rock that was recently written that talked about the government's emergency response system during the Cold War and even afterwards, all the secret bunkers and the ways in which the Congress and president would be shuttled away, and still the system that we have in place today that ensures the U.S. government goes on in case there's a nuclear war.
And what was the name of the first one? You said the name, but I didn't catch it.
And There Was Light.
And There Was Light. Okay.
Yes, by John Meacham.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, we've never had either of those recommended, so those will be new books on the list.
There you go.
The last thing, Stuart, all of us here in this room right now have not gotten to where we are without at least one or two people in our life that we would consider a mentor or someone who inspired us. Who would you consider your mentors in getting you to where you are today?
I'm like you guys. I've been blessed with having a lot of great mentors over my life. I've had some great examples of, I think, who I want to be, and I think a few of maybe who I wouldn't want to be, when I got into this role. I would share with you guys that probably one of the hardest working, I think, person that I've ever been around was my mom. A single mom, someone who managed a very, I think, tough career and three boys, all with a smile on her face. Never is one that in the 82 years she was alive, I never saw her complain. I never saw her feel sorry for herself. And I never really saw her blame other people for her problems. I mean, she took those on and dealt with them. So, I think that would be the one that I think about a lot of times when times get bad and we're all human. You want to complain about something.
That's a really nice story about your mom and a great way to remember her. I'm sure she would have loved to hear that. So that's wonderful. Yeah. Stuart, I can't thank you enough. I mean, this has been a fascinating conversation. I don't think we've had one with a CEO that's focused on empathy. So I think that was really nice to start the conversation off with that. We're big proponents of that here. So thank you for bringing that message in with you today and for being a great example on how to use it in a company.
Well, thank you all for allowing me to, and thank you guys for everything you're doing as well.
Thank you. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us this month. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode and our wonderful guest. Until next month, when we're joined by another security professional, stay safe and secure. Till then, see you.